everybody. So we are the C2 group, and we will be talking about the application of the theory of rights by Immanuel Kant on resolving of some moral issues. So we have chosen a few questions. We are four on the group overall, and we will be answering it basing on the theory of rights by Immanuel Kant.
Hello guys, my name is Louis Ramirez. So yung topic na napunta sa akin is death penalty. So sisimulan ko siya sa tanong na binigay sa akin. Is death penalty ethical? Una, ano muna yung ethical? In Tagalog term, sa atin mga Pilipino, ibig sabihin, wasto, tama. In other term, appropriate, solution, sagot, ganyan. So, balik tayo sa tanong. Is death penalty ethical? Eto, based on Google, sa search ko, the ethics of death penalty are clear. Taking a life in punishment for murder is not justice, but vengeance. One does not right a wrong by creating another wrong. For execution, it means state are experimenting, trying new cocktails and methods that are not proven and are likely to cause horrible deaths. So, katulad ko, nag-aral ako sa Catholic school. Hindi ako pinalaki na ang paggawa ang paano itama ang mali ay paggawa rin ng mali. So, hindi sagot ang pagpatay sa pagtama sa tao. Okay? So, eto, bibigyan ko lang kayo ng trivia. Si Google na, eto, may religion ang Google. Tinatawag siyang Religion of Church of Google or Googleism, isang satirical religious organization noong 2009. So, mismo na si Google na nagsabi, naniniwala siya na ang pagpatay ay hindi hustisya. Isa tong uri ng paghihiganti. Okay? Salamat sa pakikinig. Simpleng bagay lang yun pero sana may natutunan kayo. Thank you.
So now let's have resolving moral issues of same-sex marriage using Immanuel Kant's theory of rights. Kant's theory is an example of deontological moral theory. And according to these theories, the rightness or wrongness of an action does not depend on their consequences, but rather on whether they fulfill our duty. The universal principle of right is what Kant wants to offer, that any action is right if it can coexist with everyone's freedom in accordance with a universal law. And this claim must be understood in light of Kant's more general claim that moral law cannot be based upon happiness alone or any other given empirical good. He argues that happiness, although universally sought by human beings, is not specific enough to entail any particular universal desires in human beings. And no particular conception of happiness can be the basis of a pure principle of the state. And the general conception of happiness is too vague to serve as a basis of law. Hence, a universal principle of right cannot be based upon happiness alone, but only on something truly universal, such as freedom. So Kant never really had a prejudice against same-sex marriage, maybe because it was not an obvious issue before, but it became a huge one now. His teaching could have been based on his own social shame or his fear of exposure. And this is referring to his theories on marriage and sex itself. Because along his theories, Kant claims that marriage requires equality between spouses, between the man and the woman. Kant himself taught that man and woman are not equal and will never be equal. And some of his insightful remarks on the issue reveal that he is also aware that, as a matter of fact, women were disenfranchised by society and suffer legal and other forms of discrimination. So Kant, according to his own account, cannot approve of heterosexual marriage, which is a marriage between men and women. And if the thought of heterosexual marriage is being outlawed doesn't seem right for him, then what would make it right for homosexuals, for both men and for both women? So Kant is in a sense of being an hardline universalist because he stands by this quoting, we are human and should be treated fairly by one another. So therefore, I have come to a conclusion that Kant would also say that we should not outlaw same-sex marriage. And that's all.
So let us talk about divorce. Is divorce moral? Let us first dissect the question, is divorce moral? So why is it a moral issue? Divorce had become a moral issue because marriage, we all know, is supposed to be a lifelong commitment, and that divorce should not be a result of it. It can cause emotional stress for the divorcees and their families as well. The youth of society see this happening and it teaches them that it's okay to give up when times are hard. It also makes it harder for everyone in the family to have healthy relationships in the future after the divorce. But before answering if it is moral, let us have a bit of background on the theory of rights by Immanuel Kant. So, the theory of rights argues that complying with the right set of rules and guidelines stands out as a uh, better mechanism for determining the appropriate course of action, as opposed to the over reliance on achieving the most impacts. So, basically, the ethical actions originated from accomplishing one's duty. So, this theory of rights uh, is revolving around the fulfillment of one's duty, which, of course, these actions should be defined by rationality. So, with reference to Kant's argument, duties are universal and it is owed to all people. So, in other words, or in other terms, Kant believes that it is the responsibility of each individual or of a person to fulfill their duties as set out in the universal principle. So, how does this relate to divorce? This actually relates to divorce because if a husband and wife get married, it is or it had become their duty to be there for each other as significant others. However, if this marriage doesn't work out and if they divorce, they have failed to succeed their marriage duties, which in Kant's theory of rights, a person must fulfill. It is a responsibility of a person to fulfill their duties. Therefore, it is unethical to divorce and it is immoral to divorce. So, conscience will argue that divorce violates the vows that were made during the marriage, that one would remain married to the partner at all cost, hence, having the vows saying, till death do us part. It is a thought that, irrespective of the consequences of not divorcing, the obligation to respect promises made to the partner makes divorce unethical. However, this assertion might be or may be challenged by some circumstances that may lead to the consideration of divorce. However, these circumstances must be extreme to be permissible. So Kant's perspective provides exceptions. So there's an exceptions on fulfilling or the responsibility of the duty from a much easy to identify personal circumstances. So for instance, one knows when he or she is breaching marriage vows but only guesses the implications of divorce. Thus, domestic violence or any other divorce causes that have negative emotional, physical, mental, and psychological implications for parties to a marriage, therefore, make the divorce something moral.
Hi, good morning everyone. In this part of slide, the question here or moral issue here is mandatory COVID-19 vaccination moral? Based from my understanding from Immanuel Kant's theory of rights, yes, it is moral due to the following reasons. It is really necessary that everyone would be vaccinated because it would give additional protection against COVID-19 and prevent the transmission of the virus. Second, because the purpose of COVID-19 vaccination is to reduce the cases of COVID-19 and prevent the transmission of the virus, which would greatly benefit us. Here are some of the examples of the benefits. More establishments or businesses would be allowed to operate, which would open more job opportunities. Another benefit is less exhaustion to healthcare workers and other frontliners, which would give time for them to rest, and there would be less risk in their health. And last benefit that I put here is availability or opening of face-to-face class, which some of the students wanted, maybe for more interactive learning. And lastly, mandatory COVID-19 vaccination is moral simply because healthcare is a moral obligation. That's all. Thank you.
I know